Good morning. Time to motivate you and go get your projects done. Speaking of projects, here's going to be the question for today. Would you rather have the thumbnail that I have up is a Honda Fit motor done by the guys at that's Oscar Jackson and Jackson Racing, and they were with it started another company with the guys from Skunk Racing and stuff. And anyway, they had a ROTREX supercharger which is a little small centrifugal supercharger, and they had this. They made kits using this for various applications, Miatas and things like that. This particular one was for a Honda Fit. And just like if you had a small Vortec or a ProCharger or Torque Storm kind of thing, that's what this ROTREX was. And it's a centrifugal blower, so it spins off of the crank. It has a step-up gear on it, basically, that gets the impeller, because what they're using essentially is like the impeller from a turbo, and then they spin it up fast enough to where it starts relative to engine speed also, but it's multiplied, and they get the impeller speed up enough to where it provides enough airflow and boost going into the motor and makes more power. It works really good. Just like a lot of the things that we have videos up on. But what I did was way back, I wrote a book on this kind of, they were called B segment cars. So little hot hatches. I had a Toyota Yaris and a Nissan Versa and a Honda or a Scion XB and an XA. What else? There were a couple of other like little hot hatches that were being sold back in the day when this was back in 2007 or 8, or I think is when this was going on. And so I was contracted to do a book on the performance for all of these upgrades. So one of the things we did, there was a chapter on forced induction, like with all the books that I did on, because there's a chapter on air intakes and headers and exhaust and tuning and camshafts and cylinder heads and all that kind of stuff. And obviously there's one on forced induction. And this test was included in it. Was a test that we did with the guys with Oscar Jackson. And it had the supercharger on it, because one of the best ways to improve the power output of any combination, obviously, is to add boost to it. I mean, if there's in these, for a lot of these combinations, like the Toyota Yaris and the Scions and stuff, there were a few things for them, but it's not like your typical, LS motor or Hemi motor, small block Chevy, big block Chevy, where you have multiple different kinds of, 10 or 15 or 20 different cylinder heads available for them, and literally hundreds and hundreds of different camshafts that you could get for them, different intake manifolds and all that. So for a lot of these things, there weren't any of that. In fact, for a lot of that book that I did, I built a lot of the intake manifolds. So I built a Yaris intake manifold. I built the Scion manifolds, both of them, the XA and the XP. I built a new intake manifold for the Honda Fit, which is actually a little bit easier because it was a two-piece intake. Part of it was aluminum and part of it was composite, and it separated it, unbolted. So it made it easy basically to shorten the runner length, or you could also lengthen the runner length too. And I built a dedicated one for the Versa, and that actually worked very well. And I built a bunch of Miata intake manifolds and stuff along the way. So all of that worked out really well, but it's something that I had to do because there just wasn't a huge, normally when I do these books, like with a 5-liter Mustang, which was the first one I did, there are umpteen million things to test. I didn't have room in the book. I didn't have enough pages basically to test all of the things that I wanted to test. So, but in the case of the B segment deal, there wasn't sometimes there wasn't enough things to test. I mean, there were usually air intakes. And the cool thing about the air intakes, and this is especially the case like with the VTEC Hondas, there are different length air intakes. So you can try different versions of it. As you use a short one, use a long AEM one. There are different versions of those because especially on the VTEC motors, they do different things. But there's only so many of those that you can test. And if there aren't 15 or 20 or 100 camshafts to test, you have to regrind your own. Same with cylinder heads. For none of those cars were there any aftermarket cylinder heads for them. So you have to take and test a ported stock head or an upgraded version of the existing thing. Nitrous was very easy because there's a fogger wet fog or nitrous setup for anything works on anything. So you can put that on a Honda Fit or Yaris. The same one works basically on all of them. All you do is adjust the amount of power that you want to add based on what the original NA power output was. The interesting thing about this book is it never came out. I finished it and turned it in, and then the company stopped making books. So, I mean, I got paid for it, but I didn't get any royalties or anything after that. But it was interesting testing, and that was a while ago. So there's a lot more stuff that's available now. But the cool thing about this, the thumbnail that I have up, is it's forced induction. It's a centrifugal supercharger. And as we know, any kind of boost is, and especially if we don't have a lot of other things to choose from, it can always benefit from ported heads and cam timing, but it will certainly benefit from boost. And a lot of these small motors were already fairly well, they were fairly powerful relative to their displacement. So they're pretty efficient already. And so adding boost to them, the thing that they lacked, you know, because it's a small motor in most of these cases, they lacked torque. The one exception was the 2.4 and the XB compared to the other 1.6 and 1.8 motors. That one actually did feel pretty torquey, but it had to move around a heavier vehicle too. So if you can add 30, 40, 50% in power from a low boost kind of thing, it really made these things feel better. Like the Yaris was great with a turbo. The guys from HP Performance helped me get one on there, and we hooked an AEM up to it, and that worked good. So those kinds of gains are very good. But the question is, which, in fact, we're going to do our poll here. So would you choose a centrifugal supercharger over a turbo to upgrade your hot hatch? Let's see what people have to say. It was cool. This book was very cool, like the other ones, like the LS books and the Honda books and the Focus books and stuff. The thing that was hard about this particular book is that, like I said, it was the lack of available like parts to test. Even with the Focus, there were a lot more things. There were a number of camshafts available. There were ported versions of the stock head. They had, while I was doing the book, they had come out with the SVT version, which was good. There were lots of superchargers and blower kits and turbo kits for the Focus. There was just a lot of different stuff to test. And the problem is with these, I had to just make a lot of it because there just wasn't a lot of things to choose from. And that's unfortunate. It's kind of cool when we have choices, when we have, even though some of them, you know, they're not all going to be right and are right for our applications. It's cool to have those things to choose from. We want to have a short runner sniper intake manifold that we can make fun of and say not to use that for the vast majority of people that need long runner intake manifolds. But it's cool to have 2 or 3 or 4 different factory ones, and then 10 or 20 aftermarket ones that we can pick and choose from to do the thing that we want it to do. And like we talked about, that's a combination of things. Does it look really cool? Does it make power in the range that we want to make it to? Does it adjust the power range that we want to make it, the new version that we want to make power at? Do we want to make power at 8,000 or 7,000 or 6,000 or 2,000, wherever we would want to do that? Do we have intake manifolds to choose from that will help us do that? And can we combine those with the right camshaft and cylinder head combination and that kind of stuff? And not having those choices is not nearly as fun as actually having those choices. And we get a lot of that in the bigger V8 stuff. Some of the V8s, AMC is a perfect example. There is more now for that than there has been in the past. But traditionally, if you look at a small block Chevy, there's 20 or 30 sets of cylinder heads for it. But if you go to upgrade your AMC, there's not going to be that. And that's how it was with a lot of these import deals. And at the time, some of these were even new. So when something's brand new, the availability of aftermarket performance parts is kind of limited. So let's see what kind of projects you guys got going on this morning. See what everybody's doing. Live feed. Whoop, whoop, we're in the morning. Richard, good morning. Quick question. I have a 5.3 BTR stage something turbo cam and springs, valves, 706 heads, TBS intake, manifold. So what roller lifter do you recommend? We run the stock ones more often than not. Most people choose, if you're putting something, if you're going to replace the original one that was in the motor when you got it from a wrecking yard or wherever you got it from, the Johnson stuff or the factory LS7 lifters. I think people are probably saying that. Can you type without looking? No. Travis, you want a supercharger because of your LSJ? But the obvious answer is going to be both. Because why would you pick just one? And interestingly enough, I have got that comment a lot when I was doing stuff on the compound boosted combinations. When we did the compound boost on, I've done it on a 03 Cobra motor where we run the factory Eaton supercharger and then have turbos blowing into that. We did that again with a factory Eaton supercharger and a turbo blowing into it on the 3800. And then we did a compound turbo on turbo action on an LS. But the interesting request that I've gotten more than a few times is, why don't you combine a centrifugal supercharger and a turbo? And I don't understand that request, because the centrifugal supercharger is not really going to help the turbo spool up, and the turbo will be there to do everything that it needs to do. It's like the turbo and the centrifugal supercharger are going to be battling each other on the way up for the top end. And I just don't, for that combination, I don't think that that's a good combination. I don't think you're going to get much from that you wouldn't have already gotten from the centrifugal blower if you sized it correctly for the power output, or the turbo, which would already be working in that range anyway. So it's more often that when you're going to do a compound, if you're going to use some sort of crank-driven blower and a turbo or turbos, that you would use a positive displacement one, because you'd use things that are at two ends of the spectrum, of the RPM spectrum, because a positive displacement blower is going to add boost like immediately, and it's going to have good response. And then, but the problem is it doesn't make a lot of nearly as much power per pound of boost that a turbo does. And the turbo is going to be much more efficient. So you want the blower to get the turbo going and then let the turbo kind of do its thing. That's typically what happens on the compound stuff. I had to replace the ABS unit on the BMW. Still working on the square bourbon. Cost is higher for superchargers. I think that's probably true. See, Michael, I know compound turbo and centrifugal. It's not. I don't think it's going to be very effective. Grab my 557 this Friday, then decide to install in the Lincoln or dissect and set it for boost. First world problems. So supercharger outlet is in the exhaust inlet of the turbo. No. Supercharger breathes into the motor and the turbo breathes into the supercharger. Novi 2000 on an S2000 had supercharger lag. And it had stock injectors and an FMU. Yeah, a Novi 2000 is way too big of a supercharger for an S2000. You need a whiteboard. I have a whiteboard. But the turbos will blow into the supercharger on a positive displacement supercharger. Otherwise, you would blow the turbos into the centrifugal supercharger, I think is probably what you would do. But again, I don't know why you would do that. So let's see how people are talking about. Would you choose a centrifugal supercharger over a turbo to upgrade your hot hatch? 68% are saying no. So 68% are going to be turbo people. I do have a whiteboard. I've used that in a few of the videos. I also started, in fact, I did it this morning with my buddy Jimmy. He's essentially teaching me, I guess, the art of day trading. So today I did fairly well. I was up 7, 8, 16. I was up $29. So had I been, I'm just paper trading. So we're just using the simulator, but it's very interesting. I'm fairly good at graph trends and stuff, and this is interesting to me. I'm going to be doing it for a long time and learning before I actually do it with any real money. I'm sure it's going to be different, but it is cool and it is interesting, and it's I'm kind of looking forward to a new adventure. Every time I've seen a centrifugal and a turbo and compound, just integral was the atmosphere. I don't know what you mean. Moats retired and is shutting down the business. Who is that? I'm running a Novi 1000 for my 3.7. That would be a good choice. Small amount of CNC work on the mount. It's relatively simple. Assembly. I'm assembling a 6-liter LQ4 flat top, so like an LQ9, Gen 4 rods, 20 over maybe. Upgraded rockers, AFR 1501, eliminator heads, Melling cam. Does Melling make hydraulic roller cams? I guess they probably do, huh? 206, 212, that should be good. Take a look at what cylinder heads do you have on it? Do you still have the 317 heads on it, James? Take a look at the BTR truck cam test that I did. They'll give you a pretty good idea on that with that camshaft. Do it with other people's money. Yeah, I'm not a pro, and I'm not interested in becoming that either. Me going on and starting to learn for one day is a is a far cry from any of that stuff, and I would never be interested in doing that anyways. That's something that will never happen. I don't want to go into that business. I'd rather just do it for myself. I just think it's interesting. It's interesting, and I think has potential. And the thing that I like about it is that the thing I like about any kind of this, which is why I like dyno testing and stuff and doing this stuff for YouTube, is if you know more and you work harder, you can be rewarded for that. And I think that this day trading is going to be like that as well, that the more I learn about it and the more I apply myself, the more successful you can be. And also I like taking chances. I think it's important. Honda Tech non-intercooled made about 6 pounds at 9,000. Thinking back, we had no way to correct the timing. We were running full timing on pump 93. The nice thing about that, or at least the nice thing about a centrifugal supercharger, and what makes it a little bit safer for that kind of thing. And we got away with this on the Honda because when we were doing the Bonneville stuff, we actually started out using a Vortec. And the thing is, it doesn't have a lot of boost where it makes peak torque. So it's usually a little bit more forgiving and doesn't have a lot of boost down low. So, you know where detonation is going to be more likely if the torque peak are lower. And you only have full timing. The other thing that you can do is, I don't remember on the, that's an F series, right? I think. Does that thing have a distributor on it like the B series do? Or is it a coil on plug thing? It's a coil on plug because you can always turn the distributor, but on the B series, we did that. Depends. For my Corvette, a centrifugal blower would be less weight and a smaller package, but doesn't need lots of low RPM torque. Traction is always an issue. Packaging in the Corvettes, especially, well, anything from, well, all of them, certainly C4 and above. The engine bay doesn't lend itself well to some of these things. So for turbos, for centrifugal blowers and roots blowers, the packaging is a little bit better for those. On the OBS Chevy, slightly undersized twins on a Gen 6 L29 can help give it more grunt for towing. Extends RPM range. So the answer is it depends on the application. I think the AFR 1501 heads have 20 more numbers of flow than the 317 heads without cracking. So is that what you have on there that are, an AFR head would definitely be better than a 317 head. This advice I was told for trading was market to move on emotions, and you're the only trading between fear and greed. Yeah, and what we're doing has nothing to do with that. Neither one of those enter into what we're doing. The thing that I like about the other thing, and I didn't mention it, the other thing that I like about it is the kind of day trading that I'm talking about really has nothing to do with how well the economy is doing or how well the market is doing, because we're only looking for volatility in the particular stock. So we're looking for things that are just moving around, and we're just looking at making small gains from the thing just moving around. I'm not looking at investing it at 100 and hoping it goes up to 107 or 110 or whatever. That's not what we're doing. If it goes from 100 to 101, you can make money off of that. If it goes from 100 down to 99, you can make money off of that. That's the thing that we're looking at. And so that actually can be done, like I said, irrespective of what the market is. So it's kind of interesting. Just picked up a 2022 4Runner. What are your oh no. And we did that. I think it's John is talking about Craig Motes. They make OBD1 ECU tuning stuff. I don't know who that is. Corvette, if you can deal with a hood or roots, is nice. I think that's why Kenny Bell didn't do twin screw blowers. He did some initial stuff for Corvettes, but I think that's why he didn't continue to go down that route, is because the hood clearance was an issue and guys wouldn't want to put a different hood on there. Corvette guys won't do that. Friend of mine just scored a free L83. I'm looking forward to playing with the stock 11-to-1 compression motor. They're good. It made really good power, relative to other stock 5.3 stuff. Putting rebuild 350 in a truck, what would you recommend? Normally we do the 2000 to 2500 RPM kind of thing for if it's a flat tappet for a certain period of time. We have break-in oil, high zinc stuff, and I do stuff to the camshaft even before it goes in. And then after you break it in for 20 or 30 minutes, then I usually on a flat tappet cam will drive it fairly easy for 300 or 400 miles. The magazine I did on the C5, it customized the stock hood. It does. A roots blower there definitely looks good when you pop the hood. Yeah, Honda Tech FMUs, or somebody was asking me about tuning with one of those. And I'm like, it's not really just tuning, because if you put it on there, it's going to do what it does based on your boost level. And they seem to work better with centrifugal blowers than they did with turbos, because if you had a turbo that came, it had 10 pounds all the time and went across, the amount of fuel that the FMU is providing, because it basically just be shut, was didn't seem to correlate as well with what the motor needed as it did with a centrifugal. And it was nice once they were not 12-to-1 or 10-to-1, when they were more like 5 or 6-to-1, which would be a more realistic amount of fuel pressure. Motes offered very inexpensive chip replacements and OBD1 tuning options for Ford E4s. Shame they're closing. What blow-off valve would you recommend for a centrifugal build? It depends on how much power you're talking about. So the power output, and therefore the flow, would dictate the size of the blow-off valve that you would need. Motes tuning stuff was popular with Fiero guys. I would bet being a tuning place like that would be scary right now. You ever had a cam break-in fail? And if so, what was the cause? Do you mean, did it break during? Did the cam go away during break-in? I think we have had one, but I don't know exactly what caused it. I don't know if it was a metallurgy problem with the cam itself, if it was a metallurgy problem with the lifter, if you could, I don't know how you could determine that it was too much spring pressure or insufficient zinc. I don't know exactly how you would determine that. Exactly right. Apparently, supply chain for the series hurt on Mote's business. Yeah, I'm not even familiar with them. I guess I would need to do more research and see. Maybe somebody else will step in and look at that and say, hey, look, there's a marketplace for this, and somebody needs to fulfill this. Would you choose a centrifugal over a turbo? Most people are saying no on the centrifugal. I think for those, I would be more apt to doing a cam, especially, and I have the video up where we ran a Vortec and a Turbonetics turbo. It's probably a small T3, T4 hybrid kind of thing. And the Jackson Racing roots blower that he had back in the day, the little Eaton probably an M62 on the B16, and compared them all at the same boost level. And so it's a fairly dramatic difference in power between all of those, at least certainly in the shape of the boost curves that they provide. Richard, will you be doing Gen 1 small block dyno testing anytime soon? I have a first performance TPI intake. I would pay for the shipping if you can work it into an upcoming dyno session. I don't have anything else to compare it to other than a stock tune port. Why the glaze over on the Toyota engine? Which Toyota engine are you talking about? Decided to go to a ProCharger over the turbo on my 454 LSX. The ProChargers are very, very popular for guys doing no prep stuff, where you usually have an overabundance of power and an underabundance of traction. So that tends to work fairly well for those kinds of applications. Well, I don't know anything about a 4-liter 1GR FE V6. What did I glaze over? I don't ever remember mentioning that or even talking about it or anybody else ever even bringing it up. Looking at the cams for a small block forward, how come a 220 at 50 neighborhood does the advertised duration seem to be all over the place? Are you looking at hydraulic rollers and flat tappets and comparing them with the same 220 number? Current 4Runner engine, looking at power options. Was that the comment that had the word thoughts in it? If your comment had the word thoughts in it, it's not going to get answered. So if you have a question and you just need to rephrase it without the word thoughts in it, because I don't recognize that word. Somebody asked me about my thoughts on something, I don't answer that. I do like 4Runners though. And as a matter of fact, I was just talking to somebody else about, they sent me a picture of one of them. I think it was Ben from the car farm. He said, look, I just saw one of these today. And it was oh no, it was not a 4Runner. It was a Land Cruiser. My mistake. Barry, because they're all different cam lobes, there's much more to a cam than the 50 number. Yeah, the 50 number is just one point on the lobe. And so the lobe design can be dramatically different. The whole lobe profile beyond that 50 numbers can be different. So I'm scrolling back. I don't know. What are you asking my opinion on? From memory, I think Magnuson does a supercharger kit for that motor. For which one? Have you tried arc oil? I'm not familiar with that. Da, 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 da. High Performance Academy's in the house. Installing a cam with 114 plus 4 in LM7. Is it the same installation? Yeah, you're just putting, if you're doing a cam swap on an LM7, regardless of what the cam says, you just lined it up dot to dot. You're not trying to, especially if you have a factory timing set, you're not going to have advance or retard for that. Why would you increase lift before maxing out cam duration? You would be achieving different things for those, and maxing out cam duration is not always viable. Wyatt, thank you very much. Because the duration is going to affect much more than lift. The duration is going to affect piston to valve clearance. Arc oil nano lube. I've never heard of it. What's your hatred? It's not a hatred for the word. The word's fine. The reason I don't like people asking questions about what are your thoughts on something, because it's an open-ended, vague question, and there's no answer for it. We need to get to the point. If we're going to answer questions, we need to get to the point. It's like saying, hey, what about World War II? What are your thoughts? On what? On machine guns? On Auschwitz? On Sherman tanks or Tiger tanks or any of the tanks? What is there something specific that you're looking for? And asking a vague question is not the way to get that. Be specific on what you're trying to figure out, and don't try to ask leading questions also, because I get that all the time, because they're looking for a thing and then they ask a question to steer you in that direction. Just ask your question. There's a limited amount of time. Let's just get to it. What did HP Academy do? Cheers and happy Thanksgiving. Yes, and to everybody out there, thank you guys all for your support. SRT4, choices between 272, 210 at 50, or 280, 213 at 50, building the intake for 8,000 plus revs. So it's a short runner intake manifold or something. Have a G35, 1050, which would be better for top end. Well, the question you should be asking, not which would be better for top end boost. You should be asking which one of them is going to make more power. And to answer that, you should ask which one of those is going to make more power NA. I don't know how that motor responds to those two camshafts, because just changing a duration at 50 number doesn't tell you everything about what that cam is going to do. If it's 213 at 50, that's not a very big cam. It's not a very big cam for an SRT4. It's not a very big cam for any motor. Relatively speaking, it's a little bit bigger on that one than it is on a smaller displacement per cylinder, but 213 at 50 is not very big. So my guess is, I'm hoping that the 213 cam also has more lift. My guess is that camshaft would make more NA power, and then would therefore make more power at any given boost level. How much power can a stock bottom end K24 handle? I'm trying to find that out. Mine will have ring gap in it, though. And if you don't have extra ring gap in it, that's the thing that's going to break on it. Have you done any testing with coil dwell? I have on LS stuff. Time for EFI stuff with an MSD6 series box, like say going from 2 milliseconds. Yeah, we run 4 to 4.5 on most LS things. And if we run less than that, if we run 1 or 1.5 on boosted applications, we don't have enough spark energy. What's the largest off-the-shelf cam? I don't know. I don't know about that engine family enough. I called HP Academy out when their video was new. They blocked me on Facebook. I don't know what video you're talking about, or these things that you're talking about. Thinking stuff with TFI or TPI, hard RPM ceiling of 6,000. It'd be tough to get a motor with a stock tune port runner length to make peak power at 6,000 RPM. I don't think, if I can look up and see, I can look up and see. Even on the 383 that we had, that had a lot of camshaft in it, like a 242 camshaft, which is completely the wrong camshaft for a tune port deal. Small block Chevy, stroker, TPI shootout. So even on the ported stock one, an extreme unported one, it made peak power at 5,000. Oh no, it kind of, did it come back up? It must have come back up. Oh, it did. It actually came back up. Yeah, it made power all the way out to 5,900. It made peak power at 5,000 and then dipped down and then came back up at 6,000. The stock intake manifold was definitely done at, oh no, look at that, 5,900. It just kind of flat lines from 4,800, and so we're just seeing a little bit of a, I'm talking, the difference is 1 horsepower. So we're just seeing a little bit of wiggle going as it's flat all the way across. And this one had a pretty big camshaft in it, I think. Yeah, I think it was a 242 at 50. It's pretty big. With the other tune port manifolds, like a Stealth Ram or a Holly, an Excel Super Ram, it will rev a little bit more. Oh, even with the Excel though, it 479 at 5,600. Stealth Ram should be out there a little bit farther though. 495 at 5,900. Let's see. High performance. We only block people who are being rude and disrespectful. I'm 100% behind that, because there's, even if we have disagreements. I mean, yesterday I flat out told Dan, who I really like, that he was wrong. And to his credit, he didn't come back and yell and cry and whine and, because he's a self-actualized individual. But there's a way to go about things. If you disagree with somebody, or you want to tell somebody that you think that they did something wrong or whatever, then do it the right way. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with people having disagreements about stuff, as long as you go about it correctly. That's very important. That's actually more important than, almost always, that's way more important than the thing that you want to argue about. Have you ever tested the golf ball dimples? No, not on a motor. I know that there's no professional race series that does that. There's nobody in Cup that does that. There's nobody in Formula One that does that. There's nobody in NASCAR. Cup is the same thing. I don't think anybody in Pro Stock is doing that. Yeah, Sean, you need to stop. It doesn't matter what you've stated your opinion, so that's the end of it. ProCharger might be a little kinder connecting rods, boost ramps more linear. Yeah, and that's one of the things that we wanted to do with the Big Bang stuff, is that usually the torque is you're going to get to the breaking point of the rod with cylinder pressure and torque, and so the rising boost curve of the centrifugal, which is what we want to duplicate when we do the big block and when we want to do other stuff, that you want to not have really big torque numbers, because I think the big horsepower number at the top is not going to hurt it nearly as much as torque does. I brought up stage 4 cams on a prior video, and now we're here. It's wild that you reminded me. I've never seen a blower on an import. Have you observed power gains in a street strip engine going to coil near plug? No. Usually the ignition system is it fires or it doesn't fire. I don't remember having situations where you could get to a point where you have an alternating misfire, and so it's still kind of making power. That's possible, but it's not like it doesn't have enough spark energy and all of a sudden it's making 30 or 40 horsepower less. That would be because at some times it's not firing. Let's see. Golf ball dimples make more horsepower. Everybody wants to talk about that. Richard, I think the B18C5s are overrated because I can't afford one. That's a different thing. Those are two different things. I don't ever think anything is overrated because I can't afford it. I don't think a McLaren F1 is overrated. I certainly can't afford that. I'm at the point for selecting a turbo for my Cyclone clone. So just pick it based on your desired power output. From a single coil MSD box to coil on plug, I don't think you're going to see anything. If you have an MSD box and it's a multi-strike, which especially below 3000, it's going to be. I don't know how you're going to get much better than that. Uh-oh, we're looking for love in all the wrong places. Sloppy Best Cam 6-liter, looking for 800 to 900 wheel horsepower. A 7875 Gen 2 or Gen 3 might get you to 900 wheel horsepower. The Gen 1 version probably is not going to get to 900. What would you consider an ideal cam lift duration for a 383 daily driver stick car? What else is done to the motor, and what is it? Is it a bone stock tune port induction system set up on the top? Is it ported? Is it what's done to it? I haven't seen many centrifugal blowers on 4-cylinder engines, but the Chevy Cobalt did have a roots blower or something like that. Yeah, they did. They had a supercharged version of that and on that Ecotech motor, but not a centrifugal. We ran a centrifugal on the Honda. We've run them on. We did one on a Volkswagen. We did one on a Maxima, but that was a V6. What else? Did one on the guys at Steve from Powertrain put one on. Well, that was a Honda. That was a 1.7 GSR, kind of a rare one. Have you ever tried the super stock trick on an import and power the alternator? Are you William? Is the trick that you're turning the alternator into a electric motor? My vet has a 276, 280, 228, 232 stick Corvette, 345 gears, mini ram. For a mini ram, that's probably the right kind of camshaft. That would have been an interesting thing to try, to alternate that with the Civic VX, maybe. Although that might be better for power than fuel mileage. We would turn off the load on the alternator because it didn't need to be running all the time. Runs great. Probably do okay with the ported TPI. I love the Eaton blower on my Mini Cooper. Yep. They sound cool. The roots blowers are just not quite as efficient as the turbo stuff, but they're still cool. It just needs that. You just need to add a turbo to the Eaton supercharger. So how's our poll doing? Still at 76% saying no. So I'll go ahead and close that out. We've got a lot more turbo guys than blower guys. I think that's pretty normal. Pretty normal. But we do have 75 people here and only 31 likes. The old Jackson Racing Superchargers for the Hondas are pretty cool. Those were the Roots blowers. They had the M45s and M62s. Kept trying to get them to put an M90 on something. I think it was probably a packaging issue. The only thing I didn't like is that because I ran one of those Superchargers, I think it was an M45, on my D16 on my 93 SI. So it was a D16 single cam, and we struggled to get it to 200 at the tire. Does getting likes raise your revenue? No. It just shows appreciation, for all the work. The little China blowers are only good for extremely low power up. Yeah, they would be much better for one of these Harbor Freight engines than an actual engine. LSJ blower and LNF turbo on the same motor would be cool. Yep. You can get a used M90 for $200. Yeah, you can go get those at the wrecking yard pretty cheap. And they also have 62s on those too, on the earlier ones. What timing light do you use for MSC ignitions? Whatever one we have at the dyno shop. I think that they probably have, we've used a few different ones. They probably have snap-on ones there now, maybe.
Oh, dear, no, I need those cables clean.
Yep, hit the thumbs up button every time. Does anybody know what those little, what are they, 300s or something, what those superchargers will support? I don't think I've ever tested one of those. Oh, AMR 500s, okay. And a pit bike. Still 36-pound injectors off the L67s. Is that what those are? Is that what the factory injectors are on those? The LNF by itself is hilarious. Our HHR SS. What is the Gen 5 version? Is that an L36? Does that have the same size injector? Last Engine Masters kept referring to pump gas as 10% ethanol. It might be in California. And that's also going to vary during the year, too, during the time of year. Is everybody ready for Thanksgiving? Thanksgiving! We have lots of stuff that we're doing. In fact, I need to clean my office. Richard, when upgrading your roller cam and rockers, heads trued up, MLS, head gaskets, what is the best way for me to find the proper length for new push rods? What we do to start out with, again, I look big picture and then we narrow that down. I'll take and spin the motor over and put the lifter in, put the lifter on the heel of the cam so it's not moving up. So it's all the way down. Then we put an adjustable push rod, so it adjusts for length within the sweep that we need it in. I'll put the rocker on, and what I'll do is look at the angle of the rocker and the tip and the point where it hits the push rod, and then I'll usually mark the tip of the rocker. Mark the tip of the valve. I'll move the rocker back and forth. If it starts out with the rocker being perpendicular to the let's see, we want the rocker. I'm trying to envision that now. So we want the rocker. Let's say the rocker is perpendicular to the rocker stud, and then we want the tip on the tip pattern on the rocker roller, the contact where it contacts the tip. I move that back and forth. If that's in the center, that's a good place to start. And then we put a lifter in that is that size, and then we'll remark the tip, and then we spin it over. And then if the white pattern is centered in the tip, then that's right. LS trays versus link bar lifters for 650 lift. I don't know I honestly don't think I've measured what the lift range is for the factory tray. I don't know if I've ever tried to max that out. Is there becoming a point of cylinder pressure that's agreed on? That you want to O-ring the head gasket? I feel like some people are full in and some people laugh at this premise. All right, William, you're thinking that it's some sort of peak cylinder pressure thing? It's not going to be a peak cylinder pressure number, because if you put load on something and you put load on something over a period of time, which is what turbocharging actually does, it raises peak pressure a little bit, but it raises average cylinder pressure quite a bit if you watch a cylinder pressure trace. So it's not likely that you're going to hit a peak point that's going to create the need for that. But I don't have an exact number for you on what that would be. Keep the guard on your angle grinders. Richard, I'm undecided between two cams, 226, 235, 231, 239. First, the second cam is going to make more power. And what motor are you trying to make up 500 horsepower with? Because the first cam is not going to make 500 horsepower on a 5.3 if that's what you have. It will definitely do it on a 6.0. Been 35 pounds, no problem on 11 millimeter studs and 13-to-1 less it knocks. On 13-to-1? Pip, I don't think a 226 cam is going to make anywhere near 500 horsepower. Well, you know what? I take that back. I think the cam that we put in the first 5.3 that I did with good ported heads like Trickfo 205s and a fast intake was a 224 cam, and I think that one was about 485. So maybe and that was an LM7. So maybe with flat tops, a 226 cam might get you there. We used it more like a 231 cam that made a little over 500. That was a Holley high ram. That was on the nitrous Big Bang motor. I saw Jay Leno. I saw a picture of him. He was out of the hospital and looked good. Yeah, it's gonna need good cylinder heads. I don't know about Sean Hyland. I haven't heard anything about him for a long time. Really good cylinder heads help you a lot with your camshaft choice in terms of making power. And the nice thing about ported cathedral port heads is that you can either port 706 heads or 862 heads, and then, or if you get like a 205 head, we used as cast 220 heads on the Big Bang nitrous motor, and they flow really well too. But all those heads can be 300 CFM, so you have enough head flow to support 600 horsepower. So that really helps you get to 500. William, what is a typical fuel used for the dyno? It's almost always 91 on almost anything that's NA. It's 91. And then on boosted stuff, I normally try to run E85. Sometimes back in the past, we ran a lot of race gas stuff, but not nearly as much anymore. Gen 3 with Gen 4 rods and pistons, fully ported 860. So if somebody did a good job on the 862 heads, then you might could get there. Wouldn't any 5.3 have to spend 7,000? Yeah, that's about where we made peak power on the ones that I did. So to put that into perspective, LS Cathedral Port, nitrous, Street Outlaws, Big Bang. Here we go. Final NA made peak power at 6,800 is where that made peak power at. And I think that the one that made, so I have 3 of them, I think, that were near 500. The other one was the Big Bang turbo deal, the 5.3 turbo deal. So here we go. Final NA. That one made 503 at 6,600. Mostly because it had a fast intake manifold on it and not the other one had a Holley high ram, so it's going to make power at a higher engine speed. No nitromethane on the dyno. They may have done that, but I never do that. Freiberger may have tested that, or Brule may have tested that for one of the people that bring those motors in. Not a nitromethane like a top fuel car, but something else maybe. And then maybe they've done a fuel test with it. I just never have. One more minute. $93 octane is not an option in California. All of our premium is 91. I made 570 with a 6-liter at 6,800. If you do the math with a 5.3, it'd be 503 with the same horsepower per cubic inch. If you could keep the same specific output, yeah.
So once you find the card, then you come back and you color that thing on the coloring sheet. So it's cute. And I bought her 2 books. What? Oh, yeah.
I don't know about the 91 in other states. I don't know what their formulas are.
Okay, boys, I'm leaving. I need those tables cleaned and dried.
I don't know what the percentage of ethanol is. Robert, that sounds like a cool motor. 268, 272. CFE 15-degree heads, 427. The octane rating system is the same. We know that that's the same, but I don't know about the formula for the fuel. A bunch of spare flat top 5.3 short blocks. So are they all aluminum ones? Have you ever tried to find out how far you can push a stock LSX on 91? No, not really even interested in that. Because if you're trying to make lots of power, you should put good gas in it. On that note, everybody have a happy Thanksgiving. I may or may not be doing a video tomorrow. We'll have to see how it goes. Probably in the morning. I won't be doing any of the day trading because they're not open tomorrow. I will be resuming it on Friday, and we're not even doing it. We're simulating it, but it'll be interesting. But I will be doing a video today on small block Chevy stuff. In fact, we might be doing a couple, so we'll try to get those up and get some more, get some more vids up, more content. Thank you guys all for showing up. Be safe on your Thanksgiving, and I will see you guys all possibly tomorrow. Bow, 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 bow. Bow, now, now.